Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to your very important course Teaching of English as a Foreign Language, and you know that we are talking about the second part of this course, we call it TEFL 2. Remember that? Yes, we spent the whole semester on TEFL 1 where we talk about different methods of teaching and particularly teaching of foreign language. And our case was teaching of English as a foreign language, and we talked about lots of methods, we talked about activities, right? And we also talked how to teach pronunciation and how to teach grammar and other aspects of the teaching. And this semester, you know it well, that we focus on teaching of English as a foreign language at micro level, right? So when we talk teaching of English as a foreign language at this level, at the micro level, so we go in details, right? So far we talked about micro teaching in detail. We talked about lesson plan. We talked about role of the teacher and all that. And last lecture we started talking of what? Teaching speaking skills, and it's very important area, and I told you the scope of this area, because generally if you want to teach this language in the private sector, in private institutes, in private organizations, so over there at present we need good spoken English teachers, right? The teachers who can help students, teacher who can help in fact corporate employees to speak this language, which means the focus would be more on applied linguistics, right? So this is what we started talking of in the last lecture, that being a student of this course, how can we improve what speaking skills of our students, and how we should teach this skill, which is a very important skill. And you know that this is an output skill where you talk, you communicate, you express your in fact feelings, right? And we talk that we live because we speak, right? So it is what we call it, that survival is for the fittest, and if you want to fit in this society, you have to communicate. And I must have told you many times that, you see, when we come on this earth, but we start crying, we start speaking. So that crying is what, again, a message that we give, that you see, the child is a healthy child, right? And if a child does not cry, and you know it very well, that this is a sign that the child is not healthy. And sometimes, you see, the doctors make that child cry, you see. So this is what a message is there, that the child is a healthy child, because the crying, of course, symbolizes health over there. So we talk of the speaking skill, and that was the part one of this teaching speaking skills. And today we are going to start the second part of this area. Before we start this lecture, let's have a quick review on the previous lecture where we started talking of teaching speaking skills. And you remember we talked about characteristics of spoken language, right? That what are the features of this language that we speak. And you know that when we speak, so how do we speak? We use our articulators, right? And in your subject phonetics and phonology, you talked about articulators, right? You talk about manner of articulation, we talked about place of articulation, right? So as far as characteristics are concerned, we discuss that one, that speaking is time constraint, right? Now, what does time constraint mean? It means that you have to speak for a limited duration, right? For a short time. So, and then you see, you shift the ball to your listener, right? And once you finish talking, once you finish expressing yourself, then you take pause and you wait for a return, you wait for a feedback, right? And once you get the feedback, then again it's your turn to start your speech. So you have to express yourself, right, in a limited time. So there is what time constraint is there. That is one of the features of what this spoken English, in fact. And we also talked about that when you speak, right, you also keep in mind paralinguistic features. Now, what are paralinguistic features mean? Your voice quality, your in fact your pronunciation, your in fact volume, rate of words, intonations, right? The pauses that you take while speaking. Also, these are what some of the other characteristics of spoken language, and we can call them a non-verbal communication, right, or NVC, right? Because you know that when we communicate, so we communicate through of course the words, right? Now these words can be the oral words, these words can be that is written words, right? That is communication. Fine. So communication can be verbal communication, that can be non-verbal communication. So in verbal communication, you know that you have oral communication and you have written communication. And non-verbal communication is that communication that you do with your kinesics, mean your body language, your postures, gestures, facial expressions, eye contact, right? And also in non-verbal communication, you know that the distance between the communicator and the communicant. You see, it's also very important. And when you communicate non-verbally, we also consider what the objects around us, right? Because objects also speak. So these are, my dear students, some of course in fact were the characteristics that we highlighted in the last lecture. And then we talked about principles for deciding speaking activities, and we saw that of course we saw many activities, and the principle was that whatever activity that you are planning to exploit in the class, you need to know your audience, you need to know the resources available, right? And you need to know how to execute these activities, right? When you are teaching to beginners, right? So what do we do when we design activity? So we focus on structures, right? And again, when we focus on the structures that we teach, so our focus again is on what? Communication, right? But however, when you teach to adults, right, so over there, you see, your focus is more on communicative approach. And then of course the group work, we slightly talked about the group work activity. We'll be talking about this group work activities in this lecture as well. And then of course common types of speaking activities that we can use, and we'll be talking about these activities in this lecture as well. I hope you understand. Clear? So before I start this lecture, I want to give you this time. If you have any queries, you can ask the question, right? Because generally, of course, at the end of the lecture, I ask you to raise your questions. But today there is a change in policy, and I ask you to ask any question that you have in your mind, because you have attended 21 lectures, and of course the last lecture is still fresh in your mind because you have listened to that lecture yesterday, right? And I'm sure you must have read that your handbook, you must have downloaded more information, you must have talked with your friends, right? So if you have any queries, any questions that comes to your mind, you can ask. You are always welcome to ask questions. Why, my dear students? Of course, when you ask questions, that shows that you are in the learning phase. You are learning, right? So if you don't ask the questions, yes, it is debatable. Some people say that maybe you have learned everything. And another view is that you might not have learned anything, or another view is that you might have missed your last class. So my dear students, definitely, you see, when you ask question, it shows that you are with your instructor, and you see, you follow the instructions and you repeat. In fact, your questions reflect that you are learning and you are an active learner, right? So if you have any question, you can ask the question. Yes, Azmat, do you have any question? Where is Salah today? Is he absent? Oh, I see. Maybe he's not well. All right. And where is Anita? She's not in the class? Okay. All right. Maybe she's not well as well. Today attendance looks low. Why is it so? Huh? Why attendance is low? Okay. My dear students, again, regularity and punctuality, of course, are a must for every course that you take, right? Because once you are regular, once you are punctual, once you are attentive, so you learn things, right? One day's break, in fact, takes you back, right? So don't work by fits and start. Don't take intervals. Emergencies are there, fine, but don't make it your habit, right? So ready for this lecture? All right, I'm sure you are. Let's start this lecture, my dear students. Today we'll be talking about speaking skills, part 2. I hope you understand. Yes, part 2 of speaking skills. Let's see here. So we talked about some activities in the last lecture. Yes, and one of the activities that we talked, not rather talked, but we highlighted. So that was dialogue and role plays. Now, what is a dialogue? Two. So logos, communication. So in dialogue, what happens? The two entities, two persons, they log. They communicate, they talk, right? So what do we call it? We call it dialogue, right? So dialogue is what? A communication between two persons when they have dialogue. And then of course the role plays, right? So simple, the role, you are given a role and you play that role, right? For example, you may become a teacher. So you play a role of a teacher, or you play role of an actor, or you play role of a drummer, play a role of a travel agent, or you play role of a military officer. Is that clear? So this is what, you see, you can play that, dialogues and role play, other activities. So the problem, definitely, once you have these activities, there could be some problems, right? With dialogues and with the role plays. So two problems generally we see with dialogues in textbooks. For example, maybe the textbook that you have, or the textbook that of course you have seen. See? So again, the point is that these dialogues may not be authentic, or they may not be natural. Right? So authentic dialogues are required, fine. So the natural speech of a native speaker is often what? Phrases or sentences, fragments full of pauses, false starts and repetitions. Generally, of course, when we incorporate a text which is written, right, in an environment where English is in fact first language, so over there, if a dialogue is written by an expert, and when we use that dialogue in our culture, so we find some problems. There may be some false starts could be there, at times the weak forms could be there, at times strong forms could be there, at times, in fact, pauses could be there that we cannot understand. Right? So this can be a problem with the dialogue that we incorporate, and the dialogue is written in a different environment. So here what can you do? Ideally, right, your dialogue would be successful if it is written in your local environment. Or in other words, if the dialogue is indigenous, the local dialogue, right? So that dialogue may work. That dialogue may be successful. I hope you understand. So this is what, right? The point is that these dialogues can work. Dialogues can help. However, if you take, a dialogue which is written in altogether a different environment, so then you need to be ready for that. You need to, of course, make your students aware of that culture, because if a dialogue is written in UK, in the British, the culture, so definitely once you incorporate that dialogue in our society, so at times we have to tell our students about that environment. For example, about the weather in UK, or weather in Canada, or weather in America. Again, it's a big factor, right? So our weather, of course, and the weather in UK and Canada, there is a huge difference, right? Maybe our winter is their summer, right? So this is what a big difference, in fact. Again, the dresses that we wear and dresses that they wear, in fact. So that's why, of course, it becomes a challenging job, a difficult job for a teacher to incorporate dialogue from a different environment into our local environments. So that's why this can be a problem, because over there could be some fillers, there could be some, in fact, false starts that, you see, we have to taken care of, right? Then the way most dialogues are taught, right? Teacher asks students to memorize dialogue by heart. This is again a problem, right? So we being TEFL students, we should not expect from our students to memorize that dialogue that you are going to give them, right? You can expect them to read. There's no harm in it, right? But try not to ask them to memorize this dialogue, because that, again, because memory, when you learn things by heart, you cannot be a good language speaker, right? So these are some of the problems with the dialogues that we use. For example, BBC, of course, British Broadcasting, there's a book, of course, stage 1, stage 2, and of course dialogues are written there. So no matter, you can use, but again you have to prepare your students. You have to tell a lot, right, about that culture to the students before you use that dialogue. So if students are aware, they are exposed to different environments, they can easily understand that. Otherwise things would be difficult. For example, if we talk about the local culture, you talk about McDonald's, and of course if your students have never been there, so that example, that dialogue, of course, a role play on McDonald's may be a failure, or KFC, or any fast food that you give example, and you are teaching students from, in fact, rural areas where this facility is not there, or they have never been there. So it would be difficult for them to grasp this idea of McDonald's, because their student has never got a chance to be there. So how would he understand? Or for example, you talk about a dialogue on a stadium, for example, a cricket stadium, where your students, in fact, they have never visited any stadium. So this is a problem with these dialogues. So the point is that when you use dialogue, for your teaching speaking skills, so try keeping in mind that the dialogue should be well understood, and the students would be aware of the setting. It's very important. Other day, of course, I read the information of the dialogue writer is a must, right? For example, if a novelist writes a novel, and in the setting of the novel, right, he shows that there is co-education in a university, right? Later on, it proves that the university he was talking about, did not have co-education. So again, this shows that the writer is misinformed. So that's why when you teach your students this language, English as a foreign language, you must keep in mind that what is the natural setting of that, right, and how that can be in fact, of course, used for teaching English as a foreign language. So these are the problems, and why we talk about these problems, you see, because knowing these problems, of course, help us to address these problems, in fact. So dear students, what can a teacher do to make a dialogue more communicative? Yes, this is nowadays that communicative language teaching is in, and of course almost all teachers, all experts agree on this on this principle that communicative language teaching is in fact is a must, and this is of course an approach which brings good results, right, and which helps learners, of course, to do well, right? So that's why, of course, the teachers should consider, right, thinking what to do to make dialogues, of course, dialogues impressive, or to make dialogues meaningful, right? So there are some in fact steps for you in this context, the context that you should keep in mind. So playing the roles in a dialogue, for example, what happens that if you see that when the roles are given, and see, of course, you can set an example, right? That initially, of course, I'm sure you remember in the last lecture we saw that sometimes if the teacher feels that this dialogue might be difficult for the learners, what he does that he demonstrates that dialogue with the student, right? Maybe he picks the best student from the class, and then of course initially what the teacher does that he in fact tries to have that dialogue with one of the students, and that dialogue, and we can call it in fact a demonstration. So what happens, my dear student, that you see that demonstration prepares the students, that demonstration between the teacher and the best student gives confidence to the students, in fact, and they find it easy once it is their turn to come up and have a dialogue on that particular situation. Okay, so that demonstration can help you, in fact, in this situation. So the role playing, of course, what do we do? We play the roles in a dialogue, right? So and we can demonstrate that being a teacher. So here there are some steps that you can consider reviewing, you can think over them for effective the dialogues in pairs, right? So first of all, practice the dialogue in pairs, right? The first step that you should keep in mind, that practice makes a person better, right? The more dialogues you practice in the class, the better you would be, in fact, right? So that practice makes of course a person the better, right? For example, there is example in front of you. What time is it? Right? So a dialogue between a teacher and a student, if the teacher feels that it is the beginning of the class and the students are not well versed, or students are not confident, right, or students are shy, so he can do that. However, when the class proceeds after a month, after 2 months, so we can think of some other situations. I hope you understand. So this is what the point is, that what time is it, right? It's 3. Why? Right? So, oh, I need to go to the store. Do you want to come? Okay, just a minute, I need to finish this first. I hope you understand. So this is what the point is, that you see, you can practice the dialogue in pairs. Practice the dialogue in pairs. What time is it? It's 3. Why? Right? Why you ask for this time? Clear? Oh, I need to go to the store. Do you want to come? Okay, just a minute, I need to finish this first. Right? So dear students, we need to practice the dialogue in pairs. We need to practice the dialogue in pairs. It's important. 2 students can have it. right? And of course, the pair work really opens horizon of the students. Pair work helps students, in fact. And mind you, of course, this is the one situation. If there are 5 pairs in the class, and every pair would have a different situation. So step 2, in fact, that can help you in this situation. Ask a few pairs to perform the dialogue in front of a whole class. Right? Speaking in different moods such as happy, irritated, bored, or in different role relationship such as parent and a child, husband and a wife, and 2 friends. Yeah, again, this is a fun learning. Right? When you ask a few pairs, not all the pairs in the class, or maybe 2 pairs or the 3 pairs you ask, they come forward, fine, and what they do, see, so they can take different roles as well. For example, between a husband and a wife, of course, they take, and also what they do, they show different moods. Happy mood, for example, irritated mood, bored, in fact, right? And in this way, they can, of course, first of all, they can imagine themselves in different roles, fine, and they take those roles accordingly. An example is there. Students may paraphrase the underlined parts. Go to the post office, go to the bank, etc. instead of go to the store. Right? This could be. Or find my jacket, find my shoes instead of finish this first. Right? Please find my shoes instead of finishing this task. Clear? So again, this is what in this step 1 I told you, what is it? You practice in pair, right? And then, of course, once you have practiced having that dialogue in pair, in the step 2, what do? You ask a few pairs to come in front and have some roles, and again, do that again. You see? So, repeat those dialogues, of course, in front of the class. I hope you understand. Clear? An example I have given you. Another example is, of course, using cue cards, right? What is a cue card? A card that gives us a cue. Cue means inkling. I hope you understand. You see, a card that gives you, of course, an inkling to do something. And we call it clue card. Here's card A. You are talking to a new classmate. Begin the conversation with a greeting. Clear? Greet your partner. Ask your partner which school he/she went to before, right? Ask your partner if he or she lives near the school. Suggest you go shopping together after school. So in this way, my dear students, that you see, you can talk of. There is card A, right? And these are some statements are there, right? You can do that. Fine. Talking to a new classmate. Begin the conversation with the greeting. Greet your partner, ask your partner which school he/she went to, right? Ask your partner if she lives near the school, in fact. Suggest you go shopping together after school. Is that clear? This is what it happens, right? In this card A, this can be the information. Now card B, you are a new student at a school. One of your classmates greets you, in fact. Clear? Greet your partner back. Right? Answer the question which were asked in card A, right? Answer the question. Respond to the suggestion. Why don't you change your school? Right? So I suggest you should change this pattern. And what do? You respond to the suggestions. So card A, card B. Clear? Card A, card B. In card A, there are some questions. In card B, there are some replies. Is that clear? So this is what, my dear students, is a situation. Fine, that what we do, that here card A, there are some, the questions. Card B, there are some replies also, right? So here, then students should be ready to move quickly into less controlled type of role plays, where only the situation and the relationship between the 2 speakers are specified. Fine. You and your friend are going to eat lunch, for example, or going for a lunch. You need to decide where to go, right? You would like to try something different because you are tired of the same food. You make a suggestion. Now again, here if you see that the card A that we talked about, a simple one, and then card B had some replies. Well, students, so in this, the third card that we have, situation changes in fact, right? So in the first one we talked about that there are some questions and there's a reply. Here in this situation, my dear students, what happens that, again, taking the questions and the answer, right? We in fact put those questions and answer in a different situation, and this time can be, of course, you can ask one pair to decide on, for example, they are going out for a lunch, they want to eat out. So that pair is sick of eating with the same place. Now they have to decide to go somewhere else, right? So maybe one member suggests, right? For example, generally you take your food, of course, with, you go to KFC, for example, or you go to Savor Food, and then you want to change. Let's go to, say, McDonald's, or let's go to, some other restaurant, right? So in this way, what happens? That you give, different suggestions come forward, and you see, learning is there. Or another pair, of course, again, he can incorporate the questions and the replies, fine. But here, situation can be different, right? For example, on time management, how do you manage your day, right? How do you spend your day, right? So in this one, question, and why don't you sleep for an hour in the day instead of sleeping for 3 hours in a day, right? So in this way, those dialogues, the questions and the answers can be manipulated into a different way. I hope you understand. Yes. So dear students, this is what this card B also. You and your friend are going out to, I've just talked about, site and some suggestions. Notice that the outcome of this role play is not specified in the cue cards. It only sets up a point of disagreement, right? So again, the point is that in this card that we talked about a while from now, you see, this card, didn't talk about a specified information, right? So here you had to, use the information that you already have gained, you already have learned, and you have to put that into altogether a different situation, right? And here again, because it's a language learning the process, and of course once you learn a language, you think of different situations. At times you suggest, at times you in fact declare something, at times you request something, right? You request for something, or at times you give information, at times you seek information. So, or at times you show your anger, you show your happiness, you show your boredom. So again, these are different situations, and we of course act out these situations accordingly. So factors that affect the success of role plays, right? Of course, here there are some factors. Here, of course, we talked about. Remember this name? Yeah. So there are some factors. If I ask you, what could be the factors that can affect the success of role plays? Generally, of course, before we move on to your viewpoint, right? What do you say? Yes. What are the factors that can affect the success of role play? In fact, of course, the factors that can affect, right? What, for example, the classroom environment. Okay, fine. If the classroom is, if the class in fact coordinates, participates, right, and the classroom in fact has a good, has all the resources available. So again, it can help the role play, of course, well. Or if you see, if the information is passed on well, if the teacher communicates right information to, of course, the students, and again, this can help, right? So in this situation, my dear students, things can be settled, things can be done. Fine. So these are some factors that can affect the success of what? Role play. Teacher's enthusiasm. If the teacher is enthusiastic, if the teacher is fresh, right? If the teacher is active, role plays would be successful, dynamic in fact. So personality of the teacher. Teacher, what? Enthusiasm. Teacher's high spirit. Teacher's excitement. Teacher's spirit. Clear? Jazba, teacher ka, that makes the difference. So enthusiasm of a teacher is very important for the success of a role play. If the teacher is dull, teacher is down, teacher is passive, role plays would be passive. So my dear students, you are going to be future teachers, right? You have to take over, you have to teach this language. So once you have role plays, you must be active. Very good, right? So active teacher can have successful role plays in the class, and vice versa. Fine. So therefore, the role of a teacher or teacher's enthusiasm is important. Careful instruction. For you, we talked about it a while from now, that instruction should be carefully structured and carefully conveyed. So this is very important, that careful, of course, instructions. First you think of which instructions to be given, how to be given, in fact, right? So this is very important for the success of the role plays, right? So when you structure the instructions, you must be clear what are the instructions, fine, and how will they be understood. You just anticipate, right? So very well structured instructions, very well conveyed instructions, of course, improve efficiency of a role play. So careful attention is important. Clear situation and roles. Yes, setting, what is the situation, fine, and what is the role. Clear? Again, it's important, the factor that what is the role and what is the situation. For example, that you see the result is going to be announced and there is a dialogue between a teacher and a student, or the teacher is showing evaluation, the papers that they have taken to the students, and now this is a situation, that is the papers are being shown to the students, right? So again, there can be a dialogue between the student who got less marks, between that student and a teacher. Or you see that of course you are traveling and you're waiting for your bus, right? And then you two are students, you both are getting late, and in this situation, of course, a role play could be there. So this is important, that what is the situation, and the role should be accordingly given and accordingly act out. Is that clear? Fine, students. So this is a third factor. Another important factor is making sure that the students have the language they will need to carry out the role play, right? If the language is given, and how can you give? Yes, you can give in a handout, or you can write the expression, the vocabulary items on the board, right? So whatever teaching aid is available, by making use of that aid, you can give, of course, the maximum input, being an instructor, that students will be using. And what else you can elicit this information from the students. Sometime maybe students will be helping hand. There's no harm in getting information from the students, because sometimes you have diverse students, the students from different areas are there, of course. So then you can elicit information, you can get information from the students and provide to all, so that once you provide the students with the relevant expressions, so they can manage that dialogue well. So again, it's your success. So dear students, these are some factors that can affect what? Success of the role play. That is what? Enthusiasm of a teacher is important. He should be active. Instructions should be carefully designed, carefully structured, and again, they must be well well done, well, of course, they should be communicated well. Fine. And again, the situation should be clear to you, to the learners, to the people who are having that role play. And then again mean that, of course, making sure that the students have the language, you see, and if they don't have, you can provide them. These are some factors that you need to know, and there are many other factors as well, right, that can improve efficiency of the role play. What other factors could be, by the way, if I ask you again, that which other important factors can improve efficiency of role play, right? So, all right, active participation of the students, right? Again, if the students actively take part, they come forward, they volunteer, role play can be a success, right? And initially we talked about the resource available, right? We can do that. If you have, for example, some teachers, what they do, they make the students listen to a dialogue, right? So that listening, in fact, helps learners in different ways, so that once they perform that dialogue, so that dialogue would be better, because once they listen, they learn how to speak that expression, that vocabulary item, and things can be easily managed. I hope you understand. Yes. So dear students, here of course, using pictures, again, very important. Picture description is a very successful activity so far the teachers have been using, and of course we have seen that the interest level of the audience remains high once you have a picture, and once you describe the picture, and this is a very good source of learning a language. And this picture description brings out whatever you have, right? Once you have a picture, so then you try to describe the picture, then you see whatever language you have learned so far, it's a time for you to take that language out, because now it's time that you start using that language, right? Because you cannot describe a picture unless you have language, unless you have command of language. Otherwise, you would be in trouble, you will be in a fix, right? So therefore, once the picture is there in front of you, and you see once you describe the picture, so my dear students, that picture description, of course, you see, gets attention of the audience, right? So students, in fact, they pay attention, right? And once you describe, and then again, because there are 15 students in the class, and every student describes that picture, and you will see that every student will be describing picture in a different way. So there would be what? Again, the learning process would be fast, right? So here, of course, when there is a picture, if you see in a group of 3 or 4, you can have a look at this picture. It's a black and white picture. You can see there is what? It's a room setting, in fact, and there is a sofa combat, and there is a bed, and the person is reading, right? And you see the wall, of course. Lots of things are there in this room, and this picture can be described in so many ways, right? Of course, one student can say that this is a student who is preparing for his comparative examination, right? And he is, of course, it's late at night, and he is writing, and he is, of course, working for his exam. Or another student is there that tomorrow he has to take his TOEFL 2 exam, and he is just revising things, and he is, of course, writing things as well. You can see that. And of course, a third description could be that it's a well-managed room, it's a well-organized room, right? So this picture, in fact, definitely, of course, the more, you think over it, of course, you would describe this picture in many ways, in fact. I hope you understand. So that's why this picture can be done in a group of 3 or 4. Another picture is there. A secretary is appointed to mark a tick for each sentence said. Check which group has got more ticks, in fact. So again, there is a picture, right? You can see a cat. You can see, of course, center the table. On table, you see, of course, there is a fruit. There's the bottles, of course. So again, right? You can describe this picture in different way, in fact. And of course, once you see a picture, again, sometimes you imagine things, right? So again, your imagination would I mean come in use when you describe a picture, because one picture, I told you, that can be described in many ways, right? So again, here comes your discipline, right? If you are a teacher, you describe pictures as a teacher. If you are a doctor, you can think of like a doctor and you describe that picture being a doctor. If you are, of course, a professor, if you are a lawyer, if you are an administrator. So again, different people, my dear students, they would in fact describe pictures in different way. So again, here is of course another picture in pair, like a what? Littlewood 1981. So here means there's a picture, and there are how many pictures? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 pictures, and you see the differences between these pictures. In first picture, you see there is a table, and there are 2 chairs, and there is a what? Cassette player on one of the chairs, right? And there are 2 windows, you can see that. If you move on to the next picture, see now that cassette player is on the table, now chairs are empty, right? Third picture, see now the again, if you see picture number 1, down picture 2, right? And then picture 3, picture 4, picture 5. See, so if you see this, there are minor differences, right? If you see with micro eye, you can find these minor details, and accordingly you can describe the picture. I hope you understand, right? So that's why when you describe a picture, you have to see things at micro level. Only then you can you can describe this picture well. Again, a group of 5, right? So here there are 5 pictures, right? And again, you see there is a very, very minor differences in fact among these 5 pictures. So now 5 students of course 5 members and become one group, and they take one picture. It means there are 5 groups. They'll be describing these 5 pictures, and once they would describe, you will see, right, that every group will have will have a lot to say, right? And of course, if you see that, though this picture is not easy to describe. Now, why this picture is difficult to describe? Because you see that there is not a lot in this picture to be described. There's only a table, there's only a cassette player, and there is only a chair, right? But once you start describing, of course, you will talk about table, right? And first of all, you have to decide which table is this. Is it a study table? It is, a center table. It is a round table, right? Is it a wrought iron table? It is a wooden table, the size of the table, in fact. And then you talk about the chair, in fact, that of course chair. You see, the wooden chair, of course, wrought iron chair, in fact, the back of the chair, right, and where chair has been placed. And then you see around, of course, then from the chair you go back to chair is a power as well, right? Again, when you come to the table, of course, we can table different issues, right? And then you come on to that small cassette player. So in this way, then group 2, in fact, again, group 2 will find, will describe that picture in a different way. There may be some curtains are there, of course. Again, there's a small room, and then the table structure, if you see the picture 2, right? Again, if you see the chair again, of course. So in this way, my dear students, that I told you earlier, we talked about this matter, that one picture can be described, can be elaborated, can be interpreted in so many ways, right? So how it helps the learning process? It helps the learning process because 5 members, they think over, right? They are 5 minds, they work together, and mostly they would have information, and that would be new information. And at the end, when every group will describe that picture in front of the class, so again the students will be thinking in different ways, right? So of course it's a team learning, in fact, in shape of a group. Fine, when students describe a picture, so the first thing is that the students in fact involve themselves in that activity, and they involve themselves in such a way that they forget everything, right? And once they come in front of the class and they start describing that picture, other group members, of course, sometimes they get astonished that this was an angle that they could not think of, right? So my dear student, these are what 5 pictures, and they will be described, of course, in different way, and accordingly, of course, learning would be better. So again, there's an activity, we call it problem solving activity. It's a very good activity, right? So it has dual purpose, right? One way that students would be learning how to fix problems and how to solve problems, in fact. So you are on a committee that is in charge of deciding what to do with the small amount of money that has been donated to improve your language center or university or college. You have a list of things to do, but you only have enough money for 5 of the items, right? You must reach a consensus in your group on which 5 items you will spend the money. Here's the list, for example. So here is the list, for example. So in this way, when you problem solving activities, right, in our day-to-day life, of course, we have lots of problems in our life, and we sit together and we think of, we decide, we talk, and then finally we in fact try to of course solve that problems. In fact, we have many family issues, we have educational issues, we have leave issues, of course we have study issues. So, and this can be used. And again, my dear students, this problem solving activity, again, it's a good activity. Why? Because the student, in fact, again, they put themselves in that situation. And students then know that, they realize, if you are teaching adults, that, well, this is a matter that they face in their life. It's a day-to-day activity, right? So on one hand, they are improving the language. On the other side, you see, they are sorting out a problem, in fact, and they learn how to solve a problem. And of course, here I tell you that in the business administration, the problem solving activity is a must, in fact, over there, because they are trained. The students of business administration, they are trained how to identify a problem and how to find alternatives for the problem, and how to in fact sort out a problem. So in this way, my dear students, things, of course, are done. So this activity is useful, but on one hand, the students, they improve their fluency, they work on their accuracy, and on the other hand, they learn, in fact, how to fix problems, how to find solution to problems. So this can be a problem solving activity. Like a situation is given that you have money, and you have enough money only for the 5 items. Now you have to decide which 5 items to be taken off, and which other item. Again, you set priority, of course, right? That these are the priority items. We must not, compromise on them. These are the items that, of course, and here again you have to see what are your needs, what are your wants, what are your luxuries. So, of course, your needs must not be compromised. Clear? So in this way, my dear students, of course, what you do, that you see, you work on your problem solving activities. Like here, of course, you see the list of activities have been given, and you have to work only on 5. Of course, you can think of so many activities for the problem solving activities. In fact, for example, deciding on, right, of course, to freeze next semester or not, deciding on how to, some students, of course, they want to be in the job quickly after the degree, and some students, they want to wait for some time. In fact, they want to have a better job, right? So for the better job, they might have to wait for 4 or 5 months. And some students, they don't wait for those 4 or 5 months. They want to be in the job market, and they have a low salary, but they start working on it. And some do not compromise on it. Some say, no, of course, I have to be in a better place, and for that I may have to wait for some times, right? So again, there can be a negotiation, and sometimes this takes time. When you sort out the problems, of course, maybe a family matter, it can be any matter, in fact, right? So my dear students, you have to work on these things. So this problem solving activity has been a successful one. Well, students, so these are, in fact, the problem solving activities require your high level of language proficiency, right? Also, these problem solving activities, in fact, participants tend to become personally involved. their involvement is a must, right? They begin to relate the problems as an emotional issue as well as an intellectual and moral one. So their personal involvement in this problem solving activity is a must. Other speaking activities, my dear students, find someone who stand up and walk around the room, right? Ask your classmates what they like to do. Remember, you must speak in English only, right? For example, ask some students to come and be a teacher, right? Of course, act like a teacher, of course. Ask someone to come forward and act like an SHO, of course, right? So in this way, different, speakings can be arranged. You can ask someone to come forward and address the audience, right? You can ask someone to come forward, right, and be a state secretary. You can ask someone to come forward and conclude a ceremony. So in this way, these activities can be in fact used. For example, someone who likes to swim, right, or likes to play basketball, likes to play badminton, so on and so forth, right? And people who are interested in playing football, you can ask them, okay, now tell us how to play football, right? Be a coach now, right? So of course, if somebody in fact is good at playing cricket, so he would tell you, of course, what is playground, the size of the playground, right? And then of course the oval size, right? And then of course he would tell you about the crease, he will tell you about the wickets, tell you about the bails, in fact, tell you about the size of the ball, which kind of ball do we use. He would tell you about white ball, he would tell you about the green red ball, he will tell you about the bat, the size of the bat, he will tell you about the cricket kit, he will tell you about the colored kits. So all that, similarly for the soccer, similarly for the swimming and whatever, right? In this way, because of course in your class you will have students from different disciplines, they have different hobbies. So once they talk of their hobbies, they would have the language and others would be benefited. So in this way, we can use that. A model conversation can be provided, right? So like there is a model can be given, right? Because again, model is not for the memorization, right? Model just to facilitate, because once there is a model, they can use that model well, right? So a model can be provided to the students. It's just a facilitation so that they would have an idea, like there's a model in front of you. You can see, great. Would you mind singing your, signing your name here for me, please? Sure, there you are. Thanks a lot. See you around, right? In this way, of course, we can, or some other bingo activities. Bingo mean, of course, on the spot you decide which activity to be used, right? Seeing the morale of the students, seeing the, of course, enthusiasm of the students, you think of some activities. Or change the story, right? Step 1, focus group of 3 to 5, right? Form a group of 3 to 5. The group together makes a list of about 20 random verbs. Go, sleep, this and that. Step 3, each one writes a short story and underlines all the verbs in the story. This could be, in fact, you can do that. Yesterday I saw a cat. She was running in the street. She had a fish in her mouth. Go on. Clear? In this way, in fact, a story can be of course written in the class and can be of course narrated. Fine. And students love narrating stories, and some are very good at narrating stories. Or you can ask them to cut a joke, to share a joke, in fact. In this way, of course, students, in fact, they speak well. So you can have a look on these points, right? So, and no specific responses, right? The teacher calls out a verb and students hold up later. Fine. Hold up a letter card each and rush to spell a word. This seems to be practicing listening rather than speaking. Clear? This can be, in fact, you can do that. There is, of course, Mr. Chen's example, a card game, right? Read about it, that on the table are a set of picture cards face down, right? No one can see the picture. Students B hold one of the cards with a picture on it. Students A cannot see the picture. So she asked students B a question, what can you see? Right? I can see a dog, I can see a cat, right? No, you are lying. Yes, I believe you. Fine. If student A is right, he gets the card. If student A is wrong, student B gets the card, right? Then they take turns. When the card is over, the one who has got more card is the winner. So in this way, my dear students, what happens is that you can, of course, improve speaking skills, and of course you can help students teaching speaking skills. The most important aspect of participating students, in fact, or preparing students to speak in their life, is to give them as many opportunities as possible to practice producing unplanned, spontaneous and meaningful speech under the time pressure. Like we said earlier, that spoken language is spontaneous. Spoken language is time constraint, right? So when you provide opportunities to the students, they would be speaking, right? So that speaking, of course, helps them, improving the language. The more opportunities, the more they speak. The more they speak, the better they would be, in fact, right? So dear students, this is what our lecture on speaking skills. We spent, in fact, 2 hours on this one, this particular area, how to teach speaking skills, considering its importance, right? And you need to be a very good spoken English teacher. For that, I gave you some tips, I gave you information, and you can use this information, right? You need to know what are the role plays, what are the dialogues, and how can we use these role plays, right? So how can we write these role plays, and if we have to incorporate from the international world, how can we do that, right? And if you have to write our own dialogues, own role plays, what can we do? And of course, picture description is a very good activity, right? It opens horizon of the students, right? The picture description checks language of the students, right? Language proficiency. So again, it can be very well done in the class, very well executed in the class if you are prepared, right? Or other speaking activities, there can be many, of course. You can, I give you examples. You can ask somebody to come forward and conclude a ceremony, or you can ask someone to come forward and direct to the students, please move on, please follow me. The things that they really need, right? On telephone, how to start talk, how to end your talk, right? So in this way, my dear students, these are some activities that we can use in helping our students, of course, for their effective speaking. With this, it's time to say Allah Hafiz. See you in the next lecture. Till then, it's goodbye.